Ben, lead the way, and you can share the screen on the specs and stuff.
Yes. Hello. I will try and click the right button.
Here, I'll add it.
Is this working?
Yep.
There we go.
You can see it.
Yes. Thanks for the lovely picture there. Okay. The idea of Codex FileHog is a tool that uploads a folder of data to the Codex storage network. That's pretty much it. That sounds simple, but it takes a few steps. It's a bit of a to-do. It's something that I kind of sort of accidentally already wrote as part of our testnet stress testing efforts. But the way I made it and the way it's intertwined with the testing code, it's not usable outside of that ecosystem. And after I'd already done that, I realized basically it is useful if we had something like this that is more standalone, that is more something anyone can use. So I figure instead of trying to write it all myself, I write the specification, so the requirements for the thing, and then see if there are any eager beavers who would like to give this a try. So this is just a Codex thing. It's not a Wahoo thing. I just made a repository, got a nice picture, and I put requirements, and it's just a markdown. So the use case is, as a perfectly normal and regular computer user, I want to store my folder with lots of very important family photos and video files in a secure, durable, and privacy-preserving manner, so that I can reliably access them later after my hard drive has failed, and also while not handing them over to a centralized, potentially untrustworthy third party. I want a tool I can run on my folder that accomplishes this automatically. Makes sense, right? Any questions?
Yes, 2 questions. You don't mention encryption. Should that be part of this first paragraph to make it clear that you probably don't want to push anything public because it's on a public network? That's the first part. And the second part, I think it would be worth explaining or elaborating on the word automatically, because you say, I want to upload my content from a folder, and then you say automatically, and I don't know what it means. I have some assumptions, but not.
Yeah, good questions. Good questions. The first about encryption is Codex does not have encryption right now in its current alpha form, but it will soon enough. Actually, it came up during the last priority meeting, so that's on the radar soon. And then everything you upload to Codex is encrypted by default.
Good.
And it will, secure it for you automatically.
So there's going to be a caveat, right? So altruistic mode is encrypted by default with an optional flag not to disable that. But durability mode will be encryption by default with no flag to disable.
And I think there might be also a question of how it is encrypted, and whether if I use this to share, to store my photos, which maybe multiple people from the family want to have access to somehow, eventually, maybe I need to have some flexibility with that encryption.
Yeah. So Guru has been working with Taco, and Taco pushed a PR. You guys probably saw where they put encryption into CipherShare, and then I think they also can do access control. So we don't plan on doing access control in Codex, but encryption, symmetric encryption for now. A more sophisticated version of encryption later down the road, probably sometime in 2026 is when we'll dig into it more.
So maybe I need one more clarification about this FileHog thing, and that is, you kind of fall back into Codex will have encryption, Codex will do that, but this sounds like an application on top of Codex, so it should probably do some of the stuff itself. So, for example, integrating Taco, not relying on encryption that Codex comes with, right? So has to be distinction of like what are the things that we need from Codex or that FileHog needs from Codex, and what are the things that it should do on its own. I guess it's the point.
The thing is, if you bring in access control and sharing files with other people, we're talking about other use cases than the one I put here, right? So I put one use case here. It's fairly simple. I have my files. I want to store them. I want to access them later. I'm not saying anything about sharing with other people or access control or whatever. I just want a tool that does this, and it does it automatically. So to answer your second question, what does automatically mean? Is I start it and it runs, and that's it. Like, it doesn't bother me anymore after that. It keeps running until I turn it off. Right?
And
periodically.
Yeah, but what do you mean by that is?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that is that it will automatically upload any new content or modified content from that folder?
Yes. And that is described in detail in these requirements.
I think we have to wait, Václav. I think we asked you questions too early. We should probably let Ben go through the entire proposal. Then hold our questions.
Do you want me to actually read all the things?
No. I think you skimming things like the important parts, because I think the intention of this is we spec it, we hand it off to an external contributor, potentially, who wants to pick up this work. They learn about Codex, they get compensated, and then if they do a really great job, maybe we hire them.
Something like that, yeah. Or maybe I'm hoping that this idea will spark other ideas, like sharing files and doing access control. Like it was already sparking other ideas just now. But it's basically a sort of a good one to get your feet wet with Codex and what it can do. And something that's not too tricky to build, but not so simple that it is actually something that we want built, right?
Yeah, I like it because I wanted to build like a backup system on top of Codex. So I have a automatic backup set up with my laptop, and it stores some backup folder or tarball somewhere in an external hard drive. But it's just an external hard drive, and if that fails, then I don't have any backups. So I want something that will be more resilient, and this might actually be it, right? And that, like, this particular thing, FileHog, can actually do that too. It doesn't have to be a separate thing, as long as I use some other way to actually do the backup of my system, which my Ubuntu system comes with. And all I need is there is a folder where the files land, and I need them to be backed up somewhere off my property, as in physical property.
Yeah, pretty much, yes. So I guess I will highlight a little bit of this document very quickly, just for a few minutes. So I put down some terms. Most interestingly, the target folder is the folder that is being saved. And there's an output folder, which is just a folder where the tool writes its output. So there's definitions of what that is later on, but also logs and crash reports or whatever. And there's a few assumptions that I put down ahead of time. So the content of the files in the target folder does not change. Files are never deleted from the target folder. There's a size range between 1 megabyte and 1 gigabyte, and one or more Codex endpoints are provided. So people can obviously set up their own Codex node, but that is not something that I would expect FileHog to support you in, right? You point it at one or more Codex nodes, you point it at a folder, and then it does its thing. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So there's a section about configuration and some steps about validating it. You have to obviously be able to set the input and the output folder. There's different ways of laying out the output. You have to set the API. You have to specify the details of the purchases. that will be made with Codex. Then there's a step about ingestion. So we will loop through all the files in the folder, and for each file in the folder, we will send it to a Codex node. We make a purchase in the Codex network for that file, and we confirm that the purchase is started. Now, the result of these steps, this results in two CIDs, so the basic one and the storage contract one. There's a purchase ID, there's a timestamp, and there's some other information that you probably want saved, and that should end up in the output folder so that when I go and I want to retrieve the data that's been stored with this tool, there's a folder there that has everything in it that I need to get back to my data. So the tool will have to purchase storage capacity in the network for that. It's just a testnet, so I can use the free testnet tokens to just try and run this, see that it works. And the tool should definitely keep track of newly added files in the target folder, because I might be adding stuff and I want that to be picked up. And it should monitor purchases that it has made in the network. And should these purchases stop because they expired or they failed or they just finished, because these things have durations, then the tool should see that and it should renew the purchase. It should keep the data in the network for as long as I, the user, want it to be there. Yeah, the tool continues to run until you tell it not to do that anymore. There's a bit about error handling. There's a bit about load balancing. So if you provided multiple Codex endpoints, it should try and use all of them. I really want this to be working on any major operating system, but most importantly, without a graphical shell, because there are headless environments where we could definitely use this. And then there's some obvious bonus goals that you could think of. So a method to notify the user when interesting stuff happens. And the output folder ends up having all the necessary information to retrieve the saved files, as I explained earlier. It would be kind of nice if this information itself could be somehow packaged and stored in Codex as well. So I end up with a single identifier, a single CID, by which I can then fetch the data in the output folder, by which I then can fetch the actual data. So then it's packaged up and it's packaged up again. So there's a single CID that the user receives that says, okay, here is all the content. And ultimately, that final message that says, okay, here's everything, is machine readable so that other applications can receive that message and run with it, right? Because that in itself enables like a whole bunch of other use cases. So then there's other stuff, like there's a constraint on the file size limit. Maybe someone has a clever way to get around that. There's a possibility that like the storage of the data in the network isn't working, even though the tool and Codex is working, but there's something wrong with the network. And in that case, maybe there should be like some sort of soft backoff and retry system. That would be really cool. But most importantly, I want to end this by saying, if you come up with any ideas of your own for this tool or for something else, please, we invite you to contribute your ideas, and we'll talk about them, and maybe they're brilliant and we or someone should do them. Any questions?
I have just one. I think I have just one, and I'll have to go, so I'll ask first. Sorry. I like it a lot as well. My question is, why do we want to upload all the files separately? And I don't know if it was in your constraints, but is there like does it have to be like a flat structure in the target directory as well? So like just list of files, or can there be subfolders, and how those would be handled? Like, do we tar them up and upload them, or do something else? And like, why don't we tar up the whole thing and upload the whole thing as a one data set?
Good question.
I was wondering as well.
So in the configuration, I said like the output can probably be flattened or structured, and there'll be different situations where you want either option. And it's detailed out later.
I'm talking about target folder.
The target folder. So that is a good question as well. Like the folder where the data is coming from. Probably there are use cases where it's just fine to tar everything and then send that. But maybe when I am on the receiving end of the output of this tool, maybe I don't want to necessarily fetch everything. Maybe if there's lots of large files in the target folder, then I fetch the overview of what's in the folder. I see how big these files are. I want to probably be able to fetch specific entries in the folder, not necessarily the whole thing, right? There are use cases where you could say it's easier to tar everything and then send it, but yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, so like in the context of how Codex currently works is like, we're going to have gigantic slots more than likely, right? These slots may be 10 gigs or 100 gigs. So like to Vaclav's point, like if you have like a lot of tiny files, right? If I have a folder of tiny JPEGs, and then I have to essentially pad all those JPEGs to be the size of, a slot, maybe, I don't know. If I want to have each of those pictures have its own storage contract, right? That's going to be a lot of bloat. So then I say I have a folder of 100 images, each image is a megabyte. I pad it to the minimum size of a storage contract. So say 30 or 300 gigs if it's 3 slots on, 3 storage providers or something like that. I understand for retrievability purposes to have like use cases where you're wanting to only retrieve like a certain image within that folder. But then I also I wonder if we should constrain FileHog to just be for a pack of a lot of files put together, because we do on our roadmap have dynamic data as an objective. And so ideally that's what it's used for, right? You just append smaller data to an existing storage contract that's overly provisioned in size. So it's like no different than how Google Drive or your typical Dropbox stuff works.
So I really have to go, but I have a proposal for this, and then we can talk about it and say whether I'm stupid or not. But 2 ways: specify multiple folders, multiple target folders. Basically, by that, you can say each target folder is a tarball, and then you could have many, and then every single thing in those folders as they change would just be in a tarball, and you could have many tarballs, or make it one target folder, and then files in that folder are uploaded separately, and subfolders are packaged as a tarball and uploaded separately, right? So then you can control the structure in the target folder. You can, on Linux, you can bind mount to various folders, and other files and all these things, and you can control the structure and just say, in target folder, list of content is separately uploaded as separate data sets, but anything that is in subfolders is part of that one data set for that subfolder. It is not optimal solution. It is not covering all the cases, but it gives you some flexibility and is simple enough to implement so that you can control what and how gets uploaded where.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you very much for inviting me, and I'll be happy to jump on anytime again, but now I have to really go.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for joining us, Vaslav. See ya.
You guys.
Yeah, he makes some good points. And I can totally imagine there are use cases for either approach or maybe a bunch of different approaches. Or maybe you want to configure this thing in such a way where you say all the small files are packaged together until there is at least something of 100 megabytes, and then we can make storage contracts no smaller than that. That would make sense to do. But, there are probably edge cases to that.
Yeah.
And then is that acceptable? And so, it's
I
trade-offs.
think it's going to be ultimately who wants to pick this work up, right? Because this is a nice spec, but I think we have in mind who this might go to, and they might have an idea of how they want to restructure this. But yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And different people want different things for different cases, but we have to start somewhere.
Yep.
This seemed like a sensible start. And
it's a great start.
I would also like to not put too much foreknowledge into the spec regarding what Codex can and can't do. So if the slot sizes have to be 100 gigs, but we may have like in-network aggregation of smaller sets somehow at some point. Those are problems that I would definitely like to be solved inside Codex and not design around that for now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, Ben. And we can wrap it up. Thanks, everybody.